Charles, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate your time. Tell me about your business. Tell me where you're located. Tell me what you do, your website address, all your social media accounts.
Thank you. I appreciate you, inviting me to this, and hopefully I can give you some good information here. But my name is Charles Townsend, and I am a filmmaker and videographer located in southeastern Virginia. My company's name is ALOFTPRO, and you can find that at ALOFTPRO.com. I also have two other videography brands that I manage. One of those is Charles Films, and that's one I work with a partner. And then another one is is sort of a affordable option, which is called Cloud Wedding Films. And so the primary goal is to make sure that we're able to kind of meet expectations from a wide variety of clients.
Gotcha. Cool. So let's talk about the first option. So that is just filmmaking and videography for weddings.
Yeah, the ALOFTPRO is, I know it's got kind of a weird name, and it actually derives out of the early days of the company when our focus was mainly on drones and commercial videography.
Gotcha.
And, because we started our business in early 2015, and there was a real big push at the time to get, to hit the drone market. That was really what we were looking for. I had done photography for several years, done a lot of weddings, and kind of took a break from it. The industry was changing. I really wasn't able to keep up as a photographer. But then when I saw the drone market emerging, the way videos were starting to change, the accessibility of some of the gear, we started the company again with the focus of doing drone videography, and we did a lot of weddings as a subcontractor, as a freelancer for photographers and videographers. But we were also doing. I'm sorry, go for it.
But I was going to say, it's cool flying a drone around, right? Trying to.
Absolutely. There's, you get especially in the early days, there was a lot of instant fame, so to speak. You would, because our drones, especially at the beginning, were very large, and they were monsters. I mean, they were, you would have to assemble them. They were all black and shiny and carbon fiber, and you'd hang a full camera from the bottom of them, and people were just astounded by, and they made a lot of racket.
Yeah.
And I mean, and some people, they were legitimately scary and legitimately dangerous. And that was, so it was always sort of a very adrenaline filled thing. But
yeah, I can imagine.
The drones got smaller and they got less expensive and they became more accessible. But what we found was that all of our other projects that we were doing, you were making short films, we were making commercials. We were starting to get a lot of more attention from people asking if we could just film the weddings as well. And having done photography, I knew the format of weddings, and so I figured if we could translate our filmmaking skills into weddings and incorporate the drones, then maybe we could have a little bit of a dynamic there that we weren't seeing from several of the other local videographers.
That's cool. Yeah.
And then what we did see, and I guess it's maybe more of a marketing thing, is because when people would visit aloftpro.com or they would see us on Facebook or whatnot, there was more of a commercial feel about it. We decided to actually create a brand that was a little bit more maybe wedding, a little bit more social.
Gotcha.
And that was where the Charles Films came in. And it's a lot more of a creative outlet for us, so maybe not so, like I said, so commercial looking.
Yeah, less commercial, right? Because Aloft, is more like, I can see where that, is more commercial based, right? But yeah, Charles Films, that sounds to me like it's a they're a filmmaking company that does, amazing events. I mean, just write the name right off the bat. So
Exactly. And, having my partner, his name is Brian, I'm Charles. So it's the only negative to it is I will sometimes be called Brian, and so I think my last name is Charles.
yeah,
But that's fine. My partner, he's actually my brother-in-law. We've known each other for 25 years. So it's,
right.
people used to buy us, matching outfits. So it's not a big deal. So,
And then what's the other option that you have?
in the cloud wedding films, what I was seeing, especially when you were looking at sort of the wedding wire knot market, what I was seeing was, with those markets, which are now to combine now, I think they're just Wedding Pro
Yeah.
now. They'll probably come up with a new name eventually. You had this like price up front sort of advertising, and the ALOFTPRO and the Brian Charles Films was not necessarily a price up front thing. It was more custom. We wanted to meet our clients' needs, not tell them some sort of prepackaged option. So, I sat down and I said, what would it take for me to have me to supply a service that kind of met the check boxes for that type of market, and I didn't want to mix it in with my other brands because I didn't want it to kind of either take over or get hidden. So
that makes sense.
Created it itself. So, so once I set that up, I figured out I basically had two packages. They're very affordable. Simple packages where I kind of outline everything, boom, 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 this is what you get. And push those out to, again, the wedding wire and the knot type of markets. And that one, so each of those, the ALOFTPRO, the Brian Charles Films, and the Cloud Wedding Films you can all find those on their individual .coms. But I also kind of cross blend them, cross link them from each of the sites.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about the reach down a little bit. So, I know weddings are all weddings are different. Some people have priorities on different things. So some people have priority on photography and video. Some people have priority on the food, right? It just really depends on the couple getting married. And so, I think it's great that you actually saw that you have this brand where it's custom, right? What do you want to do with it? What's the vision you have for your wedding? Let's build something for that from the Brian Charles perspective. Or video photography is not such a priority. We do want video and photography. Oh, well, the other option is perfect because here's what you get, boom, 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 boom. It's affordable. And then it's, that's it. So you capture some of that market, which there's a lot of that market actually. And then that allows you to do that piece and then also have this, have your custom piece where you can, really create and get creative about it. How do you feel like that's working out for you from a marketing perspective? Because I think I think a lot of luxury brands do that. I see them do it all the time. So from your perspective, how are you feeling about it?
Well, the two things that I like about it, and my original inspiration was actually from a local photographer who was doing a fairly similar thing. Michael Dragon, if you ever hear his name, he's very good. But him and I were at a conference together, and because I had kind of looked at his profile before I came to the conference. I said, what is this other brand that you have? I see where you're doing this, but then he also has a teaching brand, and he has a more of I guess what looked more like a freelance brand, where it wasn't his face up there. It was, sort of just a brand that really didn't specifically identify him as being the photographer. And he said, but that would, he has freelancers, or he has people that he's training, or he has people that he's mentoring, who, you know, kind of wanted to break into the business. And so he's able to draw them in through this other brand. So you have the weight of his experience, but then he's able to offer a lower price. So that was kind of where I took a little bit of the inspiration from for Cloud Wedding Films. I would say for the first few months, I did get a lot of traffic. I don't know if that had to do with Wedding Wire and the Knots algorithms, but what I did see is after time, it really wasn't as much as I was seeing early on. But I would say that a majority of the weddings I've booked for the past 2 years have been at least initialized through the Cloud Wedding Films. And it's almost like a gateway,
Yeah.
in fact, to a more custom package. I would say 20% of the clients that I get end up going to more of a custom package. It's like they found me through Cloud Wedding Films. When I sit down with them, I say, hey, here's what you're getting. And they'll say, well, can I also get this other thing?
Yeah.
And, you know, and because we have this depth of branding, we're able to say, well, you know, let's move this over. Let me bring my partner in on this. So it's not just one of us filming your wedding. It'll be two of us filming your wedding. Or let's offer this other thing. Let's offer the drone service, or offer these other things. And so again, it's sort of like a gateway. They could just go with that one small little package that we're offering and be perfectly content with it, or they can add in these other custom options. And now, and we have the ability to absorb that change.
Yeah, let me ask you, that 20% that you're talking about, do you think you would ever had a conversation with them had you not had that other brand?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. They would have talked to a competitor that had a price that drew them in, and that's the other thing is, you draw somebody in with a price, and they like the price, and they go, yeah, I love this price. But then when you actually get down to the nitty gritty of what they get, you know, it's the same thing. You walk onto a car lot, and you're like, I have $15,000, and then the dealer shows you a $15,000 car, and you're like, man, I really wish it had windows and it had mirrors. You're like,
Yeah.
Let's walk over a little bit over here and see what these other cars look like.
Only 17,000, right? Or 18,000, a little bit more, but you know, are you willing to pay that little extra to get this other thing that you might be interested in?
Right.
Yeah.
And it does go, I would say it goes counter to some of the, some of the wedding professionals, especially in videography and photography.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more of this artist elitism that can happen. And, you know, some people might say, you know, hey, it's not good to schnooker somebody, to show them this option that you're offering, but then kind of pull them into something else. But I'm not making anybody pay more. Yeah. It's like, if they want that package, that's what they get.
Well, that's the thing is, I think it's, you know, honestly, my personal opinion is I think it's kind of counterintuitive if you say this is what you have, and then you know, like you're almost telling them something just to get the conversation with them, and then you sell them this whole other thing. To me, that's just kind of like counterintuitive, because you kind of lose them, right, at some point. And I think if you're just upfront with them and say, look, here's the starting package, here's how much it costs. You want to have a conversation? Let's have a conversation, right? And people, I mean, today's customer is interested in a couple of things pretty quickly before they make a decision to have a conversation further with you. One is, are you available on that date? What is it that you offer, and how much does it cost? If you can offer those three things right away, you can have a conversation with somebody, and then they might be interested in something else. You don't know until you have the conversation. But if you don't, you know, the worst thing you can do, I think, is not tell somebody what it is that you offer at the price, and then later have them disappointed because they couldn't afford you after you give them this whole thing.
Exactly.
It's so, I mean, I brides that I've interviewed, have told me, like one bride, she said she went to the venue. They didn't tell her any pricing up front because they didn't want to. They sucked her in, got her down there. They did the whole tour, wasted probably an hour and a half of everybody's time. She loved the place, fell in love with it, but when they showed her how much it cost, broke her heart because it wasn't in her budget. If they would have just been upfront with her, then she probably wouldn't have had the conversation and wasted anybody's time. So I don't know. I guess there's a couple of schools of thought, but that's my personal opinion of how you're going to do it more quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing too is I think some of the industry is still, I'd say 10 or 20 years mentally in the past, where they're thinking that somebody else is paying for the wedding besides the bride and groom.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, when I did semi-professional photography years ago, that was the case. I mean, it was usually the father of the bride who was handing me a check, or it was the mother of the bride, or some adult figure was the one who was calling me or handing me the check at the end of the day. I wasn't dealing with the kids. I was dealing with the adults. And when I started getting back into weddings, I saw that it was the bride, it was the groom, and they were the ones that were contacted. They were the ones asking the questions and doing the research. And that it is, I have occasionally, I'll have a parent who will end up being the one who gives me the check or pays me.
But it's not as often.
Yes, no, it's not. It's become a very rare thing. And so I think if a wedding professional doesn't recognize the need to satisfy the person in front of them, not the anonymous bank account that comes with the bride, and you still get some of those. You probably get a few instances here and there where somebody is actually footing the bill besides the couple, but most of us are seeing the bride and groom paying for this, and they want to know right up front how much this stuff is, and not
So I'm glad you brought this up, because I actually was very curious about this, because I've been doing this for over 16 years now, collecting data on the market. And yeah, back then, man, the parents were footing most of the bill for the most part, but later I realized that, man, there's something going on different here. The couples are paying for this. How are what are they doing? So probably over a series of about 2 years, maybe back about 3 or 4 years ago, I collected data, and I need to do a new collection. But at that time, this was 3 or 4 years ago, 70% of couples are paying 100% of the wedding. And then there's the small, on certain things, yeah, the parents are contributing or others, but the couple literally for 70% of everything is paying for 100% of the wedding. So it's their decision. That's why things have changed, right? It's like, are you available? What do you offer? How much does it cost? Because that's the thing that's the first thing. I mean, people are price sensitive, not just because of the times that we're in. It's because that's all we drill in everybody's head. I mean, how many times do you go get an email, hey, 20% off, 30% off, 40% off, Groupon and this and that. I mean, it's like, we're just bombarding people with discounts and this, that, and the other. So yeah, they're price sensitive. Well, duh, yeah, they're price sensitive.
Yeah.
So,
and that's where, the wedding wire and the knot market, again, that's where I said the price up front, they're designed so that people can walk in and see, I'm looking for a photographer. Here's a series of photographers and here's their price range. Bam, right in front of them. I'm looking for a videographer or a cake or something. And, with that model, you can actually like check off all of your vendors in a very short period of time. Where you are limited though is just like when you're shopping online, you want to look for reviews. You want to see, where is it coming from? How long have they been in business? When you buy from eBay, it's like, what's their selling approval rate and how long have they been doing it?
Yeah.
So, which because it's really easy. I mean, somebody, you know, I could probably, it's Friday, I could probably have an LLC up and running come Monday,
Yep.
and then Tuesday have an account on Wedding Wire or the Knot, and have a video up there even, or you know, pictures of some other service. You know, I could probably go get a bunch of photos off, you know, online, and just pull them down and populate a profile, and it would, you know, if you're savvy enough, you could start drawing in clients right away like that.
Yep.
And you know, again, the price up front model, you know, isn't necessarily a good mix for, like I said, a custom
No.
service provider.
No, but you won't have the conversation with a majority of those people. You know, you are going to get customers that come to you that just want custom. There's none of that, right? But a lot of times it is the conversation up front that pulls them into something else that they may really want that you offer. You know, that's the beauty of that model. I think that's why luxury brands do that. Not only for that, but they do it for another reason. The luxury brands do it because they're trying to grow their margin and grow their business, right? So there's only so much luxury business. Once that's saturated with their brand, they can't really grow much. So what you end up having to do is, how do we create another line, or what do we do for the you know, the outlet malls, right? That we can sell lower priced product, so that we can grow our margins, right? For many years, some of the big purse companies, Coach, for example, their revenue growth was all by outlet mall. It wasn't at the high end. All of their purse revenue growth was at the lower end model at the outlet malls. And so that's the perfect way to grow, like, or a perfect way to expand your business, or to have conversation. And then so what happens is people buy into the brand, and well, next thing you know, they're buying a higher end product within the brand, right? And so on and so on. And so I don't know, that's, to me, that's the perfect way to be thinking about your business, if you can.
Right. You know, and I don't know if it's, you know, I don't know if it's a working option for a lot of folks. You know, the other thing I also do is I freelance for other companies. And I think that's also a good way to get some, you know, experience, and also get of course, you know, get some income. But what you're seeing, especially with the freelance work, is that model of affordability, of, you know, upfront pricing, fast, simple service.
Yep.
And, you know, because these companies are designed to keep their overheads low, they'll bring in a freelancer to do the service, so they're not having to, you know, they're not having to keep, you know, videographers or photographers completely employed all the time.
Yep.
And so it's a way for me as a videographer, I'm able to keep flowing in work. So yes, I mean, the Cloud Wedding Films is sort of like me being my own freelancer, because I'm aiming at that same market that some of those companies will go
That
for.
happens in the software business too. I mean, a lot of times you hire contractors to help you with software projects, because you don't want to keep someone full-time on your staff as a software engineer, because it's expensive, right? You got overhead with that. And so if you can just freelance, say, hey, we need a contractor for a couple of months, you pull them in, you know, of course, it takes them a month or so to get up to speed. And then, you know, you work them through the project that you're working through, then you're done with them in 5 or 6 months. The other beauty of that is, if that person doesn't work out, you can get rid of them pretty quickly without having to deal with, you know, some of the other stuff. So I don't know, that I love, I mean, I think that model is a great model.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about business, because we've been talking about business all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
The whole time. But you know, as a business owner, what would you say has been working well for you, besides, you know, the reaching down into the, you know, like creating these different brands? But what else would you say has been like, yeah, this has been working well for us?
Well, the two things that I would say are the biggest focus when it comes to videography is preferred vendor lists. That has been, I would say, the key to us, you know, maintaining a flow outside of, again, some of these you know, catalog sites like the Knot and Wedding Wire.
Gotcha.
You know, we have, you know, over time, built relationships with several local vendors, venues, you should say, that is kind of one of those, you have to kind of go in and give them something first to get them to work with you. And then, you basically, you're sort of going in, helping them develop their brand, and then you will get, recompensated for that in the long term.
Yeah.
Several venues that I've worked with, I would work with photographers to do styled shoots. And 2014, 2015, videographers weren't going and doing styled shoots. It was all photographers. It was all florists and dresses and stuff like that. There was no videographers around. And I saw a lot of my friends, my photographer friends, doing these styled shoots. And I said, well, hey, can I come and film this? And the actual result of it wasn't so much that I was making a lot of friends with other wedding professionals, because you get some networking in it, but because most of these are occurring at some venue, and video works really well for marketing in venues, especially because you can show a photo, it's just like a real estate photo. You can show a photo of a room that looks really big, but then when you're there, you're like, wait a minute, this isn't as big as that you made it look in the photo. Video kind of shows some angles sometimes that you don't necessarily get with photos. And it also kind of gives a little bit more of an immersive feel, what it feels like to be there, so when a client looks at this venue, they can see what it looks like to maybe be moving through the property, and how there might be some other options, whereas they might have to look through 100 photos to get through the same information that 5-6 seconds of video will give them. So we've worked with several local venues, and we're on their preferred vendor list. I'm not a big fan of paying to be on a preferred vendor list. I think that if you're in a very closed market, maybe in some larger metropolitan areas, that may be something you might want to think about.
Yeah.
I'm also not a big fan of commission-based referrals, but I think that if you can find somebody who's being underserved, a venue that's being underserved, you go in there, you do a little bit of work for them, give them a little bit of marketability. I think that you'll get rewarded for it. And that's what I've seen is several venues who have me on their list as being the person to call. So
yeah, well, and you're building a relationship with them too, right? So you're helping them, you're building a relationship with them, and that means everything.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that leads into the next thing, which is as a videographer and as a filmmaker, the other thing for me is to make films. Sometimes, and where this would work for maybe some other professionals is, let's say you're a photographer, and if all you're doing is photographing weddings, you could have some techniques or something that you're not necessarily picking up because you're only doing that one thing. Maybe if you diversify a little bit, you get some variety in what you're doing. You go out and you take pictures of some dogs, or you do some some Instagram stuff with nature. Some of it is just to kind of keep the motors running, to keep the rust off, but also you can kind of get out there and find other things. In filmmaking, what I've found is by trying to become the best filmmaker I can, meaning that I'm trying to tell an engaging narrative story, whether it be a drama or a comedy or something, or a documentary, it really kind of engages that movie science part of my brain. And so then when I go to a wedding, and let's say the bride is in the room getting ready and the mom is there talking to her, I'm going to engage that part of my brain that says, it would be really good if the mom was standing over here instead. I'm not just going to point my camera and just get what's going on, but I might, be like, hey, mom, can you just switch over to the other side here? This is a little bit better of an angle for you. I step back. It's not too intrusive, but I can get a much better shot and tell a little bit more of a story there. Or in other situations, I do have that mindset of, I need this to edit well as well. I needed to go from what I'm seeing right now to what I know I'm going to deliver at the end. And when you're filmmaking, you're trying, when you're making a movie, you're not sitting there just going to the location and just shooting for 10 hours. You're going there with a clear mind and a plan to shoot specific things. And that kind of drives a certain discipline for you to look for and make those things happen. On a wedding day, you're looking for certain things to happen, but if you're reacting and that's all you're doing, then you're going to miss things. And so making films and keeping those muscles, moving and learning new techniques and learning the science of it has really, helped build my wedding film skills.
That's great. What would you say are your biggest challenges as a business owner?
Well, specifically to wedding videography, and I know that this is, kind of across the board for a variety of other wedding professionals, and that is, couples not thinking that your service is necessary. There are sort of those key things that most couples know have to happen at a wedding. And then there's a lot of stuff that's sort of considered to be optional. It's kind of like, if you have the budget for it, here's the things that you want to get. And, right now, currently, maybe not as much as it was, 4 or 5 years ago, but we're still, videography is still fairly low on the list.
Yeah.
And because it's also a relatively expensive service in relation to some things, you can get invitations for a couple $100, and you can get a cake for a couple $100, and then, a photographer rolls in and says 4,000, or a videographer rolls in and says 2,500. It's like, whoa, that's a big expense.
Yeah.
And if you, like I said, if you're on the option list, and you're, rolling out an expense like that, sometimes you can get cut from the option list. So
yeah, I think that methodology is changing a little bit. I think I hear planners talking more around, well, what's important to you, right? Is it the video? Is it the film? Is it the photography? Is it the food? So I think the couples, it might take some time for that to kind of like, because previously, and even back 10 years ago, it was all about, well, here's the checklist, here, here's things you need to have. But now today, I think it's more about what's important to them. And what do you like? I mean, what do you, is it the food? Is it the location? Is it the whatever? And then capturing the experience along with video. You can capture some experience with photography, but you can really capture this experience with video more than anything. And so I think, video is becoming more popular with TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. So you see that change, I think, and it's definitely coming. So, yeah.
The other two things I would say that are kind of a difficulty with particularly the videography business is a lot of times I will have clients contact me, we'll be sitting down to talk, and they'll have not watched any wedding films at all. And, for me, it's saying that somebody told you needed a videographer, not that you were inspired to call somebody because you saw some wedding films.
Yeah.
And, I look at that as being, a hurdle, because if you don't know my style or the next videographer's style, you could be getting something that you weren't looking for. You're not getting the things that you were looking for. If you watch my videos and you're like, yay, that's the best thing, I want all that, then great. But if you watch my videos and you've already hired me, and you're like, well, hey, we like what you do here, but could you do something else different over here? there might have been a better option for you out there. And I think that's the case sometimes, that the first one that gets contacted is usually the one that gets hired. And so I would say that if you're looking at somebody who's providing an artistic service, whether it's, photos, videos, cakes, invitation, is look at their portfolio and find out, how they do their work, what their work looks like, and if it's your style or not. If it's not your style, then try to find somebody who is your style instead of trying to make somebody do the thing that you would like them to do. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is trying to find a good price to value point. When I started, I was charging like $750 for a wedding, and you get clients who expect that price. Where I was also seeing other videographers who were charging, $5,000 for a wedding. And, they may be getting fewer weddings, but, it's, the type of wedding they were getting was completely different than what I was getting for $750.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So, trying to find that balance to where you feel like you're getting a good, a good payment for what you're offering, but then also your client feels like they're getting a good value for what you're giving them. That's kind of one of those struggles. So
that's always a challenge. Always a challenge. Yeah. And you should be constantly looking at what it is you offer, and how does that value to cost ratio line up, right? If I'm charging $2,500, what can I do to provide the most value at something where I can actually make a profit on it versus, just I'm eating up all the money on this thing just to deliver it. That's not sustainable. Yeah. Charles, thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
Stay safe
and healthy.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, man.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. I hope that you found it helpful. Please share it with other people. Also, if you're getting married or you work in the wedding industry, I would love to interview and share your information with other people. Send me a text, 520-399-8580, or shoot me an email at letschat@wedding.report.